Okay, I'm going to reveal more truth of heaven and earth to you, and I'm not going to reveal you the whole story of why I came to this conclusion because it's personal. I had a best friend growing up whose name was Paul. He lived across the street from me, and I was the catcher in baseball, and he was the pitcher. I helped support him in many ways, many different ways, where I can see myself as his foundation to ground him, to help him excel and help him become visible and popular, and that's really what it was. And so would consider him the northern side of the octahedron, and me the southern side, me the one who supports, me the one who gives foundation. Foundation, if you read in Job 26 and as well as Job 38, the pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his reproof. And Job 38, it talks about the foundations of the earth. The foundations of the earth. I lived at 503 Miller's Road. Paul lived at 502 Miller's Road. He lived on the northern side. I lived on the southern side. We were facing north-south to each other. And so, in that respect, I understood how the pillars of heaven were set up. And if you even look at the Canadian Meteor Orbit radar imagery of the octahedron, you'll notice that there's a separation there of the actual octahedron, northern side and southern side, at the equator. Right? Let's turn the volume off of that. At the equator, you see that gap right there in the middle? Well, that's because, lo and behold, we have pillars of heaven. I found the pillars of heaven. This is the much sought after pillars of earth, pillars of heaven, right at the foundations of the earth, which are up in the center of the earth. Let me go pull up my 3D screen here, show you. Okay, if you've been following me before, you will know and understand that we have the four living creatures, which are symbolic, but they're surrounding the perimeter field area and the center of the earth, center of the heaven. It's in the middle, right? And so we have the sunlight on the right there. You see I created in a northern and southern region extremity of the light, how it would curve like that, around like that, in that onion shape. But anyway, it would return back. So on the left side, you see it returning back toward the center. And so if I go to a side view of that, you'll see that it's that yellow line there. It's tilting negative 23.4 to positive 23.4 in a yearly cycle like that. And so I mentioned before, that's how the figurative four living creatures are blocking this knowledge, the truth. The tree of life is in the center. They're guarding that. It's hidden from you with the bending light and the actual celestial sphere that's darkened like that. I hide, Isaiah 45, covered in darkness, Psalm 102. It's all about that hiding centeredness that no one else knows but me. And that's what compresses and creates a diamond. That's why diamonds are octahedral and crystal habit. You understand? Because there's a compression involved. It compresses the hardest substance on Earth. And that's why that is happening like that. But that light has to get in there because, obviously, it's held up at pillars on the four sides like that. You see the four pillars like that? That's the way that the light gets returned back to the center like that. There's openings like that. And so on the southern region, the southern octahedral region, or the southern pyramidal region, it's just upside down, versus the northern. The northern is what it gets exposed, it gets lit up, illuminated. That's why we have more light. That's why we have more landmass in the northern hemisphere as opposed to the southern hemisphere. But it's the south that supports the north. And so that octahedron will descend, right? I mentioned that before. Did you watch that video? The octahedron will descend. And it will fall where? Where will it fall? It will fall down in Antarctica, the south. The south. That's where it gets its groundedness. You understand? It's going to descend like that down the south. And so, also remember I mentioned how the mysterious octahedral formation of octahedrites, which are metal meteorites, are happening because it's originating from the octahedron. And so when you see metal meteorites with octahedral, they call them Widmanstätten patterns, recognize and realize that they came from the octahedron, most likely the southern side, the foundation side. So those are the pillars of the earth right there. On each four sides, they can be picked up in the oceans at 90 degrees to each other. They can pick that up. They know it's there. It has four equatorial equilibrium points right there in the center of the earth. You understand? That's how it's working, guys. This is like so groundbreaking. This is I just don't think most people are ready to accept or acknowledge this, but this is what's happening. This is why we have the four pillars of heaven, four pillars of the earth. You understand? Four pillars. Let's change the shading here. Okay. And so most likely we have at the dielectric inertial plane, which is the equator, we'll have a crystalline floor, right? It's all making sense, isn't it? It's beautifully making sense, guys. There they are. The pillars of earth, the pillars of heaven. And now that we know the pillars of heaven, now we can understand how tides work. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we can understand how tides work now. Finally. Yeah, my previous answer about how tides worked was obviously semi-correct, not totally correct. I mean, I did say it was because of the moon creating pressure pockets or disturbances in pressure. And that's true within the earth. I think the moon does play a little bit into that, but the main culprit behind the tides is the actual four pillars of heaven and the magnetic quadrupole that's happening over there. Now, if you watch my previous videos, I talked about the four living creatures, how I explained them, and I explained that there are four different creatures. We got a lion, passes information on to a calf on the left there, and then to a man on the left, and then to an eagle, and then the eagle sends it back to the lion. So it's complete like that. And so, but we have two main or stable creatures. That would be the lion and the man. The lion is the origin or the source of the information, and the man learns and repeats back, and so it's brought again in a cyclical fashion back to the lion. And so those are, I mean, if you understand anything about, I don't know, satellites, like I talked about geostationary satellites within the concavity of the earth. I talked about there being four equilibrium points at the equator within the ocean, and lo and behold, two of them are stable and two are unstable, and they're opposite each other. Keep that in mind. They're opposite each other. Now, if I was just looking into some diagrams on magnetism, I'll show you what I pulled up here. Okay, that's called a quadrupole, right? Now you can understand. Let's see if I can get a good image of a quadrupole. Quadrupole. To place four identical bar magnets perpendicular to each other, such that the north pole of one is next to the south pole of the other. And that's what I did. That's what's going on here. Within the center of the earth, we have these four pillars surrounding the octahedron, and two of them are going to be stable and two are going to be unstable because we have current flowing in and out. So if you look at this diagram here, let me move that over there like that. Okay. So if you look at this diagram here, you see four sides. You see on the top left, outward force, more pressure, low tide. So you look at the arrows on the black lines, the curved lines. So they're going out of the upper left one, and some of them are going in to the upper right one, and that's the inward, less pressure, high tide. Now remember, they will tell you we have tides every 6 hours. 6 hours. 24 hours in a day divided by 4. I mean, we have the sun, the return light of the sun anyway, going through these 4 pillars on a 24-hour basis or cycle. Okay, so you can, like, figuratively, you can draw a figure 8. Like if you start at the top left, work your way to the top right, and then you go inward, and then you come back out on the bottom right. That's the outward force, more pressure, low tide. And then the bottom left, inward force, less pressure, high tide. And so it's a cyclical electrical magnetic circuit that's continual like that. You understand what I'm helping you understand? This is big, folks. This explains why we have tides. So we got the magnetic quadrupole that's doing its magic like that. And you notice, yeah, within the tide, within the Earth, we have every 6 hours there's an oscillation in tide. So we have a high tide. 6 hours later we have a low tide. 6 hours later we have a high tide, and 6 hours later we have a low tide. It's continual like that, and that's because there's a magnet. There's a quadrupole magnet in the center of heaven. That's the only way it can be happening. I showed you before. We have these equilibrium points that are 2 of them are stable, and this is why 2 are stable and 2 are unstable. Am I getting all that? Yeah. 2 are stable and 2 are unstable. There's a reason for that, guys. There's a reason. Okay. Get more of that here. So this solves everything, guys. This solves why we have tides. We're living inside the concavity of the Earth. Watch this video. I talked about how I explained the 4 living creatures. I'll put that in the description box. Also, this too, I explain what makes human, quote, God, what makes humans godlike, 4-step process. We have the transmitter, the receiver, the listener, and then the repeater. And also the 4 equilibrium points. 2 are stable, 2 are unstable. So we're going to have this. You see on the left here, the ball apparently is sinking down toward the center. So it's a stable equilibrium point. All right? And then we have an unstable one, where the ball is at the top, at the crest, and has to fall off. So we have a stable, unstable working environment with the light of the sun returning to the center. Let me get a screen grab of that. This one here. Okay, so I mean, for aesthetic reasons, I put these 4 living creatures in the center of the actual pillars, but for all practical purposes for this video, I'm going to put them up. I'm lining them up with the actual corners. Okay, and so as the sun moves around like that, you see the sun on the right over there. You see with the yellow, the sunlight, and then you have this outward display of light. I'm showing with the onion shaped over here like that, but you see on the left hand side how that light returns to the center like that, and it's going to fluctuate 23.4 degrees every 6 months like that. And so for some reason, as the light is returning to the center like that, it's going through these oscillating zones of stabilized equilibrium versus unstabilized equilibrium, or stabilized magnetism, or an outward flow of magnetism, and it's reversing to an inward flow, and it goes in and out like that. That's the only way we can explain it. So that creates a variance in pressure, and that pressure variance is continued all the way down toward the ground. And that's what causes the water to rise and to lower like that. Also, keep in mind there's a specific periodicity of the sun fluctuating in size and illumination or heat possibly as well, and that happens every 160 minutes. So if you have this variation of size in the sun, there's something else happening with the fluctuation, with the magnetism, with the oscillation. And as that sunlight returns like that, obviously it's going through the primer fields and then going up north again and shooting up toward the northern apex over there at the top there. Let me get a good... this one over here. So it's going up the top like that. But keep in mind, 160 minutes times 9 is 1,440 minutes, which equals 24 hours. 60 minutes times 24 is 1440. So 160 minutes times 9 is 1440. So we have a cycle of 9. Now 9, if you've watched any of my videos before, is a very important number. It's the finality or the completion number. And so we have the oscillations of the sun reverberating magnetically. Because of that, it goes in a stage, 9 stages per day. It fluctuates like that. Okay, this solves everything. This solves tides. This solves solar fluctuation in size. And there's no other way you can explain this. But the fact is, heaven is a real place. You're living inside the concavity of my earth. Okay, understand? There's a stable equilibrium versus unstable equilibrium. Okay, understand? We have pillars. These are some of my older animations, but my newer ones are going to include the pillars of heaven. Actually, I'm working on one. You saw part of it at the beginning of this video. I'm working on that one right now. So there you go. All right.